Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ethos Online. Again, this is a space where you can be, belong, and become the very best version of yourselves. And so, wherever you're joining us, we just want to say welcome. Thank you for supporting what we're doing. Share these videos as much as you can with everybody you know. Again, we think the Bible is filled with so much beautiful application, so much beautiful metaphor. It's all there, all to help us be better and better human beings, how to live in community better and better. And so, as we want to remind you again that we continue to offer up different ways that you can support what we're doing. You can see the links below, and I'll share more on that later. Also, hit that little bell button, subscribe. You'll know every time we have a new video. You'll see the results there. You'll see them pop up. We just want to continue making great content. And so we've continued to move through the book of Genesis. Now, it's important to know any ancient Hebrew scholar would tell you this is the book, right? The book of origins. Not literally how historically things started, but they call it the book of origins because, again, it's connecting with who Israel is as a nation, which, again, kind of transfers into who Israel is as people, as individuals, all of it. And so this beautiful ancient text, Genesis, is filled with so much beauty, so much depth. And so we understand that in order to really get the whole gist of this book, we have to look at it from the perspective of the people who wrote it. And so the book of Genesis, and actually the Bible in general, right, is written by a bunch of Jewish people. And so the question, of course, is, who are Jewish people, right? What do they believe? What was the culture like back then at that time? All of those are questions that are really important to consider when you even take a look at this book. And so what we do every week is we attempt to look at why it's written, who it's written to, and again, who writes it, right? What was the culture, the context, all of it. It's what we do here at Ethos. And so, again, understanding Genesis, which is part of the Torah, right? The first 5 books of the Old Testament. Understanding this, we understand the book of Genesis and Torah in general is written there during the Babylonian exile. And so, in this time, 587 BC, Israel as a nation is overcome, right? They're taken captive by this Babylonian empire, one of the largest empires in history. They basically are devouring all the tiny nations, and they make their nation bigger and bigger and bigger. And Israel is just one of many, many, many of these different empires that are taken captive. And so the Israelites, their temples destroyed. Again, you're going to see that theme over and over again. Temples destroyed, they're marched hundreds of miles on feet, right, to Babylon. And when they get to Babylon, the question is, what do we do with all of this new culture, right? What do we do with what the Babylonians think and believe? Do we assimilate? That's the question, right? Their God beat our God, and so do we take on their gods? That's what all the other nations do. Israel says, no, we're not going to assimilate. And so what their tribe decides to do is they write Torah. They compile all of the poetry, the mythology, the prophetic musings, the warnings, all of it. They compile that into these 5 beautiful pieces called Torah: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. They compile it all. And so it's really important to understand this is not a history book, right? This is not a history book. It was not the intention. It was not intended to be a history book. This was intended to capture the identity of what it means to be Jewish. And so Torah is a complete narrative of Israel miniaturized through its tellings. So every time you come across a character, a story, a metaphor, whatever it is, always remember, where is Israel? Who is Israel in this story? And if you consider that, and when you take time to say, who is Israel, find over and over again, Israel, the metaphor is there over and over and over again. And so we're going to continue moving through. We're in Genesis chapter 6. And so, again, we start there. Genesis, we moved through 1 through 7, verses 1 through 7. Today we're looking at verse 8, and we're going to move through some verses. Again, we only do a couple here and there because we understand every word, every phrase has importance. And so here we go. Noah, right? Noah is found to have favor with the Lord, right? And so Genesis 6:8, but Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. Now, again, interesting, the word Noah. Names are so important if you're a Hebrew person, especially when you're writing a compilation of all of these stories, right? These poetic musings, these big metaphorical stories. Every character is going to have a name, right, that fits with the story. Yeah. And so Noah, the word Noah, it means rest. Noah means rest. And so think about this. Where there is chaos, where there's pain, right? Right before the change, right before like the new season takes place, there's going to be a pause, right? There's a pause. There is a stopping point. There's a moment to reconsider, to take a moment and say this, you rest. And so Noah, when they read this word, these Jewish people, when they read Noah, they don't read what we read. They don't say, "Oh, Noah, the guy with the ark." No, when they read Noah, they're seeing, hearing, they're understanding the deeper metaphor here. Rest is about to step into all the chaos. There's about to be a moment where there's going to be stillness before the big storm. Yeah, makes sense, right? Yeah, so good. These are the generations of Noah. So it continues. And again, interesting stuff here, 1 through 2. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man. He was blameless in the generations. Noah walked with God. I want you to think about this phrase. Many people have taken this to mean, Jonah, like literally, he's walking with God and he's like holding hands and they're having a conversation, they're having coffee, whatever. No. For a Jewish person, the phrase walk with God, it did not mean this literal perspective of like Noah's literally walking with God. Because first off, if you're Jewish, the concept of God, to put God in a form, to say God looks like this, they would have called that idolatry. So this is a deeper metaphor. There's something going on here. Walked with God. One of my favorite Jewish commentators says this. He says, walking with God was a deep Jewish reference toward the messianic archetypes such as, watch this, Noah, Abraham, Moses, Enoch, Levi, and others that brought Israel out of captivity and into freedom. Yeah, that makes sense, right? That's so good. Walking with God is basically this deeper idea that wherever you go, right? When you are walking with the divine, when you are doing things that bring life, wherever you go, you are going to be building bridges, connections. You're going to be bringing life. It's what you do. Someone that walks with God is someone that's bringing life more abundantly. And so the idea Noah here, he walks with God. Everywhere he goes, he brings peace, a connection, abundant life. It's what it meant for the Jewish people. That's what they felt they were called to do. Everywhere they go, they build connection, more life, more abundant life. That's the character of Noah. And so Noah, it says in verse 10 here, it says, Noah begot 3 sons. Now again, names, really important, right? Names are super important. So Shem, Ham, and Japheth, right? Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So check this out. Again, names, so important. They're going to give us meaning. Noah, remember, Noah means the rest, the calm before the storm, the moment where things stop, you get things in order before the storm, right? Anyone, my mother-in-law and father-in-law live in Florida, right? And there's just a storm there. They got to board things up. They got to prepare. You got to rest calm before the storm takes place, right? If you've ordered things, you're not going to be as affected by the chaos. But watch this now. Noah has 3 sons. And watch this. Shem, the word means breath. It comes from this root word neshama. And again, it's the thing, the moment where you bring life, right? So Shem. Ham means majesty. Yeah? And then Japheth means beauty. So now understand this. Children were the fruit, right? The fruit of your loins. They're basically they are the things you put out into the world to carry on your legacy. That was the idea for the Hebrew people. And so again, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. This idea here is everywhere Noah goes, he brings life. And even through his children, you're going to see more and more beauty, more and more life, breath, majesty, beauty. It follows everywhere Noah goes. And so we continue, 11 through 13. It says this, "Now the earth was corrupt before God, and the earth became full of robbery. And God saw the earth, and behold, it had been corrupted. For all flesh had corrupted its way into the earth." So notice there's an elevation here, right? There's a continuation of it gets bigger and bigger. And God said to Noah, "The end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth has become full of robbery because of them. And behold, I am destroying them from the earth." So again, is this God like going, "I'm going to kill everybody because I'm just so mad and they continue doing bad things and that's why I have to wipe them out"? Is that the idea here? Well, if you take this story literally, then yeah, this God is a homicidal maniac, right? This God is worse than Hitler. This God sees a bunch of his children messing around doing things he doesn't like, and what does this God do? Well, he murders them all because he's angry. Again, there's something deeper here. This is a deep metaphor of Israel in the middle of chaos, brokenness. What do we do next? That's the bigger picture. And so notice this, there's corruption that takes place, right? There's disorder, and in the process of this, it's affecting everything. And so there is a progression of evil. There's a progression. It's getting worse and worse. And so the thing is, you let a little poison in, right? You let a little of it in, and it begins to build and get worse and worse and worse. And so Adam and Eve, think about this, this idea of lust and power, it's kind of brought in a little bit, right? The snake, it gives a little bit of a, hey, think about this, right? Consider this, knowledge without wisdom, right? Think about that. For Cain, it was this need for like identity and power. It gets into his psyche, right? Just a little bit of this kind of enters his mind, and before you know it, he lets it in, and basically it slowly becomes the only thing that they think about, the only driving force, the engine of everything they do. And so this is, again, how corruption takes place. Someone starts with a good idea, but before you know it, this one little idea, it shifts because I want more. I need more power. I need more money. I need more. And that little thing, that little subtle shift, before you know it, it becomes a snowball. And if it's a negative thing, it can get worse and worse and worse. And we're told here, the idea here is that there is a progression of corruption, and it starts really small. There's this thing that says, I need more, right? I need more. If I only get this thing, then I'm going to be happy. Then I'll have enough, right? Then I'll have enough. In film, we call this the MacGuffin effect. And again, the MacGuffin effect is the thing that the engine that kind of drives the whole story, right? And so in the film, in the book series, you have Lord of the Rings, and in Lord of the Rings, what do they need? They need to get the ring, right? The ring is the thing that we need to get, and if we only get the ring, then we're happy, then we're good, right? No one ever talks about what happens after, like Frodo, all that. But again, we need to get the ring. You've got Raiders of the Lost Ark, right? We got to get the Ark. In the Avengers movie, right? You got to get the Infinity Stones. The whole movie drives toward the thing that I need in order to be happy. And so once the thought is allowed into Thanos' head, right? Once the thought of the ring, I need the ring. Once the thought comes in, there is no turning back. Right? The thoughts there, it's poison the mind. I can't be happy. I won't be satisfied until I have that thing. That's the idea here. Corruption, it builds, but it starts small, but it builds and builds and builds until you must have the thing in order to be happy. Yeah. And so there was a study done in UNLC, and a really fascinating study. What they did is they said, we found that the brain moves through a process. It moves through a process, and once we allow ourselves to begin feeling unsatisfied, once you allow that unsatisfied feeling in, sometimes, again, this is a good thing, but other times it's not. Other times it's just not a great thing to allow in this dissatisfaction. And so, and again, I would argue our culture doesn't teach us to be satisfied. I would argue our culture teaches us to be dissatisfied, right? Never have enough, always need more. But what the study did is it basically said our brains, they go through a 4-step process once discontentment enters. And so they said this, we see it, right? There's a moment of desire. And again, this is like the testosterone, the estrogen, whatever. We see it, we kind of want it. The MacGuffin effect is beginning to take hold. I need it. I think that's the thing that's going to make me happy. And I begin to be dissatisfied with the other things around me, and that takes place of all of that. They said the next thing that'll happen is we begin to play with it in our mind. We entertain it, we consider it. And this is where they said scientifically the dopamine begins to just drop, right? And we begin to see it or be released. So we get lots of dopamine, right? It's kind of exciting. Oh, I could do this. And what about, and you start floating through, right? Ooh, yeah. And you think about it. It enters the mind. You're entertaining it. Before you know it, it's all you're doing. It's all you're spending your time thinking about, right? We entertain it. Again, this is a brain function, a process that we do. The third one they said is once it goes into the brain, once we begin to consider it, that's the moment that we say, I gotta have it. And so we experience it. And this is where the serotonin is dropped, right? And this is where we experience the thing, the enjoyment of it. And then lastly, after we've experienced it, after we got the thing that we thought would satisfy us fully, we realize didn't. And so we experience this letdown. And so oftentimes they'll talk about like oxytocin after it's been released. We feel a little let down and we need more. It's what every addict will say. And so this study, they understood the process. And so what they did is they brought together a bunch of men and women and they said, look, we made you free sandwiches, free lunch. And they're really good. It's from a place down the street. You will love these sandwiches. We want you to test them out. And so free sandwiches, right? So they brought all these people together. And after a minute or two, when they sat everybody down, they brought the sandwiches in. And before people even got a chance to start eating them, they made sure of this. Someone came in and they said, hey, just so you know, next door, there are better sandwiches. Yeah. They put the thought in the mind. And they said, if you want to go over there, they have even better sandwiches. So these people see these wonderful, yummy sandwiches in front of them. They're about to eat them. They've been excited all day to get these wonderful specialty sandwiches. But then the thought enters their mind, there might be better sandwiches next door. And so what they found, again, interesting because the sandwiches next door were actually the same kind of sandwiches. There really wasn't much of a difference. But what they found is really fascinating. I mean, I'll read it to you. What they found was, again, out of the men and women, 82% all left for the sandwiches. So here's what they said about the men and the women, the comparison. We found that once the feeling of discontentment is felt and a new stimulus is presented, there was a 71% chance in men that the new stimulus would be followed. What they also found is in women, it was closer to, I think it was closer to half. It was like 53% or something. When the thought is introduced, when we allow the thing to take place, much like corruption, right? Like what we're seeing with Noah's people during that time. Once the thing is allowed to enter, once the once the idea that I'm dissatisfied enters, it's really difficult to shift gears until you have the thing. Once the promise has been made, it's really, really difficult. There's this amazing verse in Proverbs I want to share with you. It goes like this. For as he thinks in his heart, so he is. Eat and drink, said he to you, but his heart is not with you. And so this one's kind of interesting. Again, it works this way. Once the thing's involved, once the thing pops in, once we allow that poisonous thought to take place, once it enters and it's entertained, it's really hard to get out. And so this word think here, this word think, it actually has this context. It has this interesting like little story piece to it. It almost gives a mental picture. And the mental picture, again, for the Hebrews, one word tells a story, right? One word tells a story. And the story is this. The story is a picture of someone basically eating with a friend. They've prepared a meal, and as they begin like eating, the person who made the meal is considering all the time and energy they spent on that meal. And before you know it, the person who's watching their friend eat the meal that they made, right, all for their friend, before they know it, they begin holding a grudge because they spent all that time in every morsel taken, every piece that's taken, the cost begins to be calculated. Do you see where I'm going with this, right? You allowed the thought in, and now it's bugging you. As they're eating it, you're thinking, you better be enjoying this. I spent $20 on that steak, right? One thought can completely unhinge us. And this is the idea here. Similar to Proverbs 4:3. Be careful what you think, because your thoughts run your life. And the truth is, they do. Our thoughts run our lives. And so we have to be really careful what we allow our thoughts to think, where we go with our thoughts, what we allow our thoughts to think. That's fine. Because basically, if we allow our thoughts to go toward like power, corruption, abuse, hate, jealousy, soon our actions follow. That's what takes place. Our actions are going to follow. And before we know it, much of like this description of like Noah's culture, we start going down that road, don't we? You follow the thing that you know is probably not going to satisfy. You know it's probably not the right direction, but you go anyways because the thought has been allowed to have space inside of you. And before you know it, you no longer look human, right? Like Noah's culture here. Before you know it, you no longer, as a Jewish person, look Jewish. Yeah. You no longer hold the values and the things that made you who you are anymore. That was the fear Israel's dealing with at this point. And so again, like Noah though, if you allow your thoughts to be good and positive and things that bring life to the world, then everywhere you go, your footsteps will bring life more abundantly. The fruits of your work are going to bring more and more life to everyone you meet and everywhere you go. That's the beauty of this portion of Genesis. We don't have to go down the road of corruption. We don't have to entertain the thoughts until there's no backing down, right? There's no turning back. We can stop them before they start. We can stop it before we go down that road. Because again, we've seen over and over and over again examples where, again, you allow it in, and before you know it, you regret that thing so badly, you wish you could take it back. Stop the thought. Consider your actions, right? Don't let the thing take over. Don't get to stage 4, right? Yeah. And so what do we do? How do we take this home? Here's a couple ideas I wanted to share with you today. How to stop negative thoughts. And these are things that are working for me, and it's a continual thing, right? I don't have everything down yet. I'm working, and I probably never will. But here are different ideas I've pulled from other people and my own experience. Number one is this: fill your day with positivity. Lately, what I've been doing is I wake up, I do a little exercise, I do a little meditation where all I'm doing is just focusing on my breathing. Just taking some time, closing my eyes, just breathe, right? Breathe. And then what I do is I sit down for about 20 minutes and I usually will open YouTube and I'll type in some like inspirational video on gratitude, right? I will spend a little bit of time viewing an inspirational video. And I'm telling you this, every time I do it, every time I begin my day with positivity, the whole thing explodes. I've set the course of my day in that first half hour with some positivity, and it just overflows. It continues. Another thing, really important, be aware of your thoughts. When the thought creeps in, remind yourself, whoa, hey, I've been here before, right? I'm thinking that thing's going to bring life, but the truth is, I've been here before. I thought before that thing would bring life and that didn't. Why would I think anything different about this? What's causing me to feel this way and to have these thoughts? Being aware that the thought is there is actually a really healthy step to where you can say no to certain things easily, right? Number 3, have accountability and mentors. I think this is really important. When you have friendships around you that build you up, when you have mentors you can talk to and kind of steer you in the right direction, they can help you when you're in these moments of indecision. Should I jump down this direction? Should I go there or not? Because again, sometimes dissatisfaction is a good thing, right? I'm dissatisfied with this and this. I want to create positive change. I want to lose weight. I want to do this and this. Those are great things. But sometimes we have to check with our mentors, right? The people who are close to us that we trust. And they can tell us, hey, maybe that's not such a good direction. I feel like that could snowball in some pretty negative ways. Yeah. And then the last one is this: be aware of your vices, make a plan. If you struggle with something, if you struggle when you go to the grocery store and you find yourself going down the middle lanes and buying garbage food, make a plan. Eat before you go to the grocery store, right? Only allow yourself to go on the edges where there's good food, right? If you struggle with certain things that are on the TV or whatever, you can always put new controls on them, whatever. You can only watch certain things with friends. You need to make a plan. Once you have a plan in place to deal with the vice, you essentially are not going to be struggling with it nearly as much. You won't fall to the temptation as much anymore. You're going to find a lot more victory, and you're going to be living a much healthier life. I'm going to leave you with this proverb: I will not look with approval on anything that is vile. I hate what faithless people do. I will have no part in it. And again, this is a much bigger idea. There's not literal hate here, but the idea is anything vile, anything that starts small, it will build. So be aware of it. Like Noah, consider, how do I walk and bring more life abundantly everywhere I go? Because that is what it means to be human, right? Falling down these cycles of corruption and brokenness and just the snowball going that direction, that is not what it means to be human. It's actually a step away from it. And this is the idea here. When we stop being human, when we stop following the things that bring life, chaos and brokenness and destruction will happen, right? So Noah, in the middle of this, stops. There's a breath. There's an ordering. There's a moment of, oh, do we reconcile or not? I'm aware that humanity has gone corrupt. What do we do here? Right before the storm. This is the beauty of this story. Next week, we're going to delve even deeper into the ark, the whole idea behind the ark, other ark stories. It's going to be a lot of fun. But before we do, let me remind you again, we do this by donations, right? And so please consider donating, ethos-church.org/donate. And again, this is tax deductible. We're getting closer to tax season. Please consider giving your tax deductible donation there. We would so appreciate it. And also, if you want to participate with us in online discussions, I know a lot of churches aren't open right now. And so it's really a beautiful opportunity for you to join us with live discussions twice a month. We'd love for you to be a part of it. Email me, tonywerfel@gmail.com. I'm happy to respond, send you the Zoom link. And as always, hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Love y'all. We'll see you next week.